The village slept under a sky streaked with pale clouds, but one man stayed restless, pacing before his hut. His eyes darted to the shadows, not from fear but from greed. He was a man who counted every grain of rice, every coin, every drop of oil in his lamp. He had never lifted a hand to bless his household, only to take, to demand, to remind others what they owed. And now, with debts pressing against his back like stones, he had decided to sell the only thing left that could bring him profit, the stepdaughter who lived under his roof like a ghost. She was no burden in truth. The girl worked harder than the oxen, rose earlier than the sun, and asked for less than a beggar. She spoke little, smiled rarely, and bent her head whenever the stepfather raised his voice. Yet to him she was nothing more than a mouth that consumed food. She was not his blood, not his pride, and therefore in his eyes not his child. That night strangers came. They did not walk the main road but slipped in through the forest path, cloaked from head to toe. Their presence seemed to hush the dogs, still the owls, and even the crickets fell silent as they approached. Their leader carried no lantern, yet their steps found the way as though the darkness belonged to them. The stepfather greeted them with trembling eagerness. His hut was too small to host them, so he led them behind the barn where no curious eyes might pry. There he produced the girl, dragging her forward by the wrist. She stumbled, her thin frame shivering in the night air. Her eyes searched their covered faces but not one revealed who, or what, they were. She tried to ask where they meant to take her, but her stepfather silenced her with a sharp tug and a hissed word, "Quiet." The leader of the strangers extended a gloved hand. In the other palm he held a pouch. Silver clinked softly, a sound that made the stepfather's breath quicken with greed. "You will take her," the man said, though his voice was strange, low, echoing as though two people spoke at once. The stepfather nodded eagerly, thrusting the girl forward as if she were nothing more than an animal sold at market. "She is obedient. She will not trouble you. Strong arms, quick feet. Worth more than what you offer if truth be told." The stranger ignored his words. He dropped the pouch into the man's greedy hands. The stepfather clutched it close, his eyes gleaming. He did not look back at the girl, not once. She stared at him, her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Somewhere deep inside she had known he would betray her, but still, the finality of it struck like a blade. She was no longer his concern. No longer part of the hut she had scrubbed, the hearth she had tended, the soil she had tilled. The strangers closed around her. Their cloaks brushed against her arms, cool as mist, silent as falling snow. She felt herself swept away into the darkness, the world of her childhood shrinking behind her until the glow of the hut's fire vanished. Behind her, her stepfather opened the pouch, pouring silver coins into his palm. He kissed them as if they were holy, not noticing, or not caring, that the night around him had grown colder, heavier, as though it disapproved. The girl did not cry. She only walked with lowered head, her steps small and silent, into the unknown. Yet above her, the moon peered through the clouds, its pale light brushing her cheek, as if it alone watched with sorrow. The bargain was sealed. The betrayal complete. And the night swallowed them whole. The path through the forest wound endlessly, branches arching overhead like ribs of some ancient beast. The girl walked at the center of the cloaked strangers, their steps unervingly quiet. Even when sticks and dry leaves lay thick beneath their boots, no sound followed. She glanced at their feet once, wondering if they floated instead of walked, but dared not stare too long. Her heart beat fast. The further they went, the more she realized this was no ordinary journey. No dogs barked from distant farms. No farmers' lanterns shone between the trees. It was as if the world she had known had already vanished, and only this forest remained. Fear pressed against her ribs. Who were they? Traders of flesh? Worshippers of forbidden gods? Spirits in human disguise? She had heard whispers by the well, stories of children taken by night, sold across mountains, or devoured by unseen masters. Every tale her stepfather once mocked now came crawling back to her, biting at her thoughts. She slowed her steps, hoping to fall behind, but the stranger at her side gently touched her elbow, not harshly, not even unkindly, but firmly enough to remind her there was no escape. She swallowed hard and forced herself to walk again. Hours seemed to pass, though no moon moved across the sky. The night stretched too long, as if time itself had thickened. Once she dared to whisper, "Where are you taking me?" No one answered. Only one turned his head slightly, and in the shadow of his hood she glimpsed eyes faintly glowing, not gold, not green, but something between, something that belonged neither to day nor night. She shrank back, her throat tightening. Her feet ached, but still they walked. The forest changed as they went. Trees taller, bark darker, roots twisting like serpents across the path. The air itself grew heavy, damp, and scented with strange flowers she had never seen before. When the wind stirred, it carried whispers, not from her companions but from the woods themselves. A bird called once, shrill and sharp. She turned toward the sound, hoping to see some sign of life. But the branches swayed, and she saw nothing except a brief glimmer, like a face watching her between the leaves. Her breath hitched. She almost cried out, but the servant girl's voice from the night before echoed in her memory, "Do not be afraid." Yet fear clung to her all the same, tightening like a rope around her chest. After a time her legs trembled too much to keep pace. She stumbled. The cloaked figure stopped at once, turning as one. She fell to her knees, pressing her palms into the cold dirt. "I cannot," she began, her voice breaking. But before she could finish, one of them knelt beside her. A gloved hand lifted her gently, steadying her as though she were precious cargo, not merchandise. She blinked, startled by the unexpected kindness. They gave her no words, no comfort, only silent support until her feet found strength again. It was then she noticed something more, their breath. Or rather, the lack of it. They did not pant from exertion, nor did mist rise from their mouths in the cold air. Only she seemed to breathe. The realization chilled her more than the night. Still they did not harm her. They did not strike or scold. They simply resumed the march, guiding her deeper into the woods. As the night dragged on, unease shifted to dread. They passed no villages, no shrines, no signs of human life. Only forests, darker and older with every step. At last, through the trees, a shape rose against the horizon. Towers ruined yet immense. A mansion or perhaps a fortress, crumbling but still proud, hidden from the world. Its windows glimmered faintly as though lit from within, though no flames were visible. Her lips parted in awe and terror. She felt her fate tightening around her like chains, yet also pulling her forward like a thread she had no choice but to follow. The strangers quickened their pace. She stumbled to match them. Behind her, the world of her stepfather and village had vanished. Before her, the house of shadows awaited. And the road into darkness was not yet ended. The house rose higher with every step, until the girl could no longer deny its vastness. What she had thought a mansion was closer to a ruined palace, its walls veined with ivy, its windows tall and hollow-eyed. Stones the size of oxen were stacked upon one another, yet cracks ran through them as if time had been gnawing at the foundations for centuries. She faltered at the gates, which were wrought of iron twisted into shapes that hurt her eyes. Serpents biting their own tails, faces melting into vines, suns with too many rays. The metal was cold, but when the strangers pushed it open, the hinges did not screech. Instead, a low hum filled the air as though the gates themselves sang at her arrival. They ushered her across a courtyard where weeds grew in patterns, curling into circles rather than spreading wild. Statues stood at the edges, their features worn by wind and rain. She thought at first they were saints or kings, but when the moonlight caught their faces she saw expressions of terror, hands lifted as though to ward off some unseen force. Her stomach tightened. The strangers moved with purpose, leading her up the grand steps. The doors of the palace loomed tall as trees, carved with symbols she did not recognize. Her hand brushed one, a crescent moon cradling a teardrop. The stone pulsed faintly beneath her fingertips. She snatched her hand away. The doors opened without touch. Inside the air shifted. It was warmer, carrying a faint scent of ash and roses. The hall stretched impossibly wide, filled with pillars carved into twisting figures. Women with wings, beasts with too many eyes, rivers frozen in stone. Tapestries hung high, their colors faded but their stories clear. Battles under moonlight, crowned queens raising torches, and strangers kneeling before a figure whose face had been deliberately cut away. She shivered. Her footsteps echoed as they led her across the marble floor. Yet when she listened closely she realized the sound was not her own. It was delayed, like a voice repeating her step half a breath later. The strangers said nothing. They guided her up a staircase that spiraled like a seashell. The rail was smooth beneath her fingers, though the wood throbbed faintly as if alive. Every detail of the place unsettled her. The chandeliers that swayed without wind, the mirrors that reflected the strangers but dimmed her own face, the portraits with blank eyes that seemed to turn after her. At last they brought her to a chamber. The door was wide, the room vast, but unlike a prison. Its walls were draped in velvet, its bed layered with silks, its hearth already burning with a steady blue flame. A table stood ready with silver dishes and golden goblets filled with water that shimmered faintly in the light. They gestured for her to enter. She hesitated, glancing at them, hoping one might explain. But their faces remained hidden, their silence unbroken. She stepped across the threshold. The floor beneath her gave a sound like a sigh, as though the chamber itself had been waiting. The door closed softly behind her. For a long moment she stood motionless, her heart hammering. She was not bound, not beaten, not starved. Yet the luxury of the room pressed against her like invisible chains. Why such care for a girl sold like cattle? She crossed to the table and lifted the goblet. The water rippled without being touched, glowing faintly silver. She set it down again, unease prickling at her skin. A whisper drifted from the hearth. At first she thought it was the fire, but the sound had shape, voices layered upon voices, speaking a language she did not know. She backed away, pressing herself against the wall. The whispers stopped. And in the silence she realized, this house was not abandoned. It was waiting. Waiting for her. The girl lay upon the silken bed, her body exhausted but her mind restless. Sleep came in fits, brief, shallow moments where her eyelids closed, only to snap open again at the faintest sound. The fire in the hearth burned steadily, but its flame shifted colors. Blue, then green, then silver, each casting strange shadows across the chamber walls. It was in one of these restless moments that she first heard the whispers. They crept through the walls like threads of smoke, words too soft to be clear, yet too insistent to be ignored. She pressed her palms against her ears, but still they seeped through, curling around her thoughts. The voices did not shout, nor did they sound angry. They murmured like mourners at a funeral, like secret prayers not meant for mortal ears. She rose and crossed to the door. The handle turned beneath her hand without resistance, as if the chamber had never been meant to hold her captive. The corridor beyond was dim, torches flickering low. The whispers grew louder. Barefoot she stepped into the hall. The carpets muffled her tread, but her reflection followed her in the tall, darkened windows. A thin girl with frightened eyes, moving like a shadow through shadows. She turned her head to avoid the sight, yet she swore her reflection lingered half a heartbeat longer before following again. The whispers beckoned her downward. She descended a narrow stair, its steps carved of stone that seemed too worn for so grand a palace. The air grew cooler, scented faintly of damp earth and smoke. The voices rose, and now she caught fragments of a language she half recognized, words she had once heard in the old songs sung by her mother, songs her stepfather forbade after her death. Her chest tightened. Why would those songs echo here in this place of strangers? She turned a corner and froze. At the end of the corridor stood one of the cloaked figures. Its back was to her, head bowed, lips moving. No sound reached her ears, but the air trembled faintly with power. For a moment she thought she could see through the figure, its cloak rippling like mist, its form shifting as though it was not entirely of this world. She gasped before she could stop herself. The figure turned. She expected anger or threat or worse. Instead, it merely regarded her with its hidden face. A silence stretched, heavy and strange. Then it stepped aside as if granting her permission to pass. Her heart pounded as she moved forward. She did not know what compelled her, fear, defiance, or something deeper, a thread pulling her to the truth. Deeper into the halls she wandered, past doors etched with crescent moons, past tapestries whose embroidered eyes seemed to follow her. The whispers swelled until they filled her skull, yet when she pressed her palms over her ears again, she realized something startling. The whispers were not threatening. They were pleading. They begged. She reached a vast chamber. Its ceiling rose high, painted with a night sky filled with stars that glimmered faintly, as if real light lived within them. At the center of the floor stood a circle of symbols glowing faint silver. Within it knelt several of the strangers, their cloaks cast aside. The girl's breath caught. They were not men or women as she had known. Their bodies were shadow and light woven together, shifting endlessly between form and emptiness. Faces flickered across their surfaces, faces of kings, peasants, children, beasts, all fading as quickly as they appeared. One raised its head. Its voice, when it spoke, was many voices layered into one. Midnight draws near. The others echoed, midnight draws near. She stumbled back, pressing against the wall. Every instinct screamed for her to flee. Yet before she could turn, a soft hand caught her wrist. She spun, and there stood a girl, not a stranger, but a servant with braided hair and dark, watchful eyes. The same girl she had glimpsed before, moving silently among the halls. "Do not be afraid," the servant whispered, her voice urgent but kind. "They do not mean you harm. Midnight is coming. And when it comes, you will see." The girl trembled. "See what?" The servant's eyes glimmered in the dim light. The truth of who you are. The great hall was not silent. Though no musicians played and no revelers laughed, the air itself seemed alive with rhythm, the slow, steady thrum of something vast and unseen. The girl stood just beyond the threshold, heart pounding in time with that deep, hidden beat. A clock tower somewhere above the mansion began to toll. Dong. The sound reverberated through the walls, down into her bones. The strangers rose from their silver circle. Their cloaks fell back into place, though now they moved with purpose, as if the moment they had been waiting for had finally arrived. The servant girl at her side squeezed her hand. Do not turn away now. Midnight belongs to you. Dong. The torches lining the hall flared higher, flames twisting into shapes that resembled faces, mouths open as though whispering secrets into the night. Shadows lengthened, reaching like hands across the marble floor. The strangers began to chant. The words were ancient, yet the girl understood them, not with her mind but with something older inside her, something that remembered. The chant was not an invocation of power but of memory. It was a summoning of truth. Dong. The girl clutched her chest. Heat pulsed beneath her skin, as though a second heartbeat had awakened within her. A faint glow spread from her palms, her breath quickened, her sight sharpened. Dong. At the sixth toll, the roof above them trembled. The painted night sky on the ceiling cracked apart, and through the fissures real starlight spilled. The stars wheeled above them, impossibly close, as if the heavens themselves had bent down to watch. The strangers turned their faces upward, and their voices rose in unison. Dong. The girl staggered, dizzy with awe. The stars were moving, no, not stars but figures within them. Shapes of kings and queens, warriors and wanderers, dancing across the firmament. Their motions wove together, forming a tapestry of history, lives entwined like threads in an eternal loom. Dong. The girl's stepfather's face flickered in the sky. He stood as he always had, hard-eyed, cruel-mouthed, yet in the starlight he seemed small, brittle, like a shadow cast too long. Her throat burned. Why do I see him? The servant leaned closer, her voice trembling with reverence. Because truth cannot hide from the hour. Midnight unmasks all things. Dong. The eighth toll shattered something inside her. Memories long buried surged back, her mother's lullabies, her own laughter as a child, the night her stepfather sold her like coin. Each memory burned, but each also strengthened her, as though her suffering had been kindling, waiting for this fire. The strangers knelt as one. Their cloaks spread across the floor like dark rivers, yet their bowed forms radiated light. The girl stumbled forward, pulled by a force she could neither resist nor fully understand. Dong. She entered the circle. The silver symbols flared brighter, surrounding her with an aura of impossible brilliance. The chants swelled until her body vibrated with them. Her skin shimmered as if it could no longer contain what lived inside. Dong. The 11th toll. The sound was so loud it seemed the world itself might split. The girl fell to her knees, pressing her palms against the glowing floor. Visions poured into her mind, flashes of countless lives before hers. She was not just a girl sold into despair. She was a vessel, a bearer of something old as time, hidden in mortal flesh until the appointed hour. Dong. The 12th toll struck like a blade of thunder. The hall exploded with light. The strangers' cloaks flew back, revealing their shifting forms in full. Faces upon faces, lives upon lives, beings who had walked the earth in ages long forgotten. They bowed to her. Kneeling. All of them. The girl's breath came ragged. Why do you kneel to me? Their voices, many layered into one, answered. Because midnight has crowned you. Her body glowed brighter than the circle, her form outlined in fire and starlight. She felt neither pain nor fear, only the vast certainty that the life she had known had ended, and a new one had begun. The servant girl sank to her knees as well, eyes shining with tears. You are not theirs to sell nor ours to keep. You are the one who was promised. Midnight was always meant to return you to yourself. The girl rose slowly, trembling but unbroken. The hall bent around her, walls dissolving into night sky, strangers dissolving into constellations. The entire world seemed to kneel. The tolling ceased. Midnight had spoken. And nothing would ever be the same. The silence after midnight was heavier than the storm before it. The clock's toll had faded, yet its echo seemed to linger inside the girl's chest. She stood in the circle of silver light, trembling, her hands glowing faintly as though they remembered the fire that had just passed through them. The strangers did not rise. Their kneeling forms remained fixed, like statues carved from devotion. At last one of them lifted his head. His eyes were ancient, older than his face could hold, gleaming with recognition. "You wonder why you were sold?" he said. His voice carried the weight of countless winters. "Why a man who called himself father would trade your life for coin?" Her throat tightened. She had asked herself that question 1,000 times in silence. Each time the answer had been cruelty, hatred, greed. But now, something deeper pressed at the edge of her understanding. Another figure spoke, her voice soft, rippling like water. He knew fragments of the truth, though he did not understand it. "You are not of his blood, child. Your mother's marriage to him was a mask. She was hiding you." The girl's heart stuttered. "Hiding me?" The servant girl who had guided her into the hall stepped closer, her hands trembling as she reached for the girl's arm. "Your mother was hunted. She bore within her a lineage that kings feared and prophets sought. And when she bore you, she gave the world a key it was not ready to hold. Bloodline." The word struck like lightning in her mind. She tried to remember her mother, not the scraps of memory twisted by grief, but the real woman, soft-voiced, quick-smiling, who would sing lullabies when storms rattled the roof. There had always been shadows in her eyes, a fear she never explained. "She never told me," the girl whispered. "She could not," said the kneeling elder. "To speak of such things would have drawn the hunters. To survive, she married a man of stone, hoping his cruelty would shield you. But he was not stone. He was a vulture. And when your time drew near, he smelled coin where he should have smelled fire." The words sank into her like shards of glass. Rage flared, but behind it was something stranger, relief. The years of believing she was unloved, unwanted by blood itself, cracked and fell away. She was not his daughter. She was something else entirely. Her voice shook as she asked, "What blood runs in me?" The strangers raised their heads as one. Their voices wove together, a single tide of sound. "You are born of the first truth speakers, the line that carried fire in their tongues and light in their hands. In every age, one is born who cannot be silenced, who carries within her the weight of voices long buried. You are the midnight's vessel. You are the dawn's inheritance." The words left her dizzy. A weight she had carried all her life suddenly shifted. It was not a curse, but a calling. Yet the weight was no lighter. The servant girl bowed her head. "He sold you because he feared you. He thought strangers would bury what he could not destroy. He did not know those strangers were bound by oath to serve you when the hour struck." The girl's hands curled into fists. She remembered the cold eyes of her stepfather as he took the coins, the mocking tilt of his mouth as he watched her leave. He had thought he was rid of her, thought he had won. But here she stood, reborn in midnight. A murmur rippled through the kneeling figures. "Blood recognizes blood," one whispered. "It will call to you in time. But for now you must know, your mother's sacrifice was not in vain. You are what she hoped for. You are what the world needs." Tears stung her eyes, hot and unrelenting. For the first time she wept not from pain but from recognition. The servant pressed her forehead to the girl's glowing hand. "You are not a slave, nor a stepdaughter, nor a forgotten girl sold for coin. You are heir to truth itself. And truth cannot be caged." The words echoed through the vast hall. Her tears fell to the silver floor, and where they struck, tiny sparks rose, dancing like stars. Her blood burned, not with rage but with power waking from centuries of slumber. She was not his daughter. She was her mother's child. She was the midnight's child. And now the world would remember her name. The night stretched on, heavy with the aftershock of midnight's toll. The girl stood within the silver circle, her body still glowing faintly as though fire lingered beneath her skin. Around her, the kneeling strangers remained silent, their heads bowed, their reverence unbroken. But beyond the hall, footsteps echoed. The sound was clumsy, human, lacking the rhythm of ritual. The strangers lifted their heads. The servant girl's face paled. "He comes." The girl's breath caught. She knew that tread, the uneven shuffle of a man who had grown lazy in his cruelty, whose greed dragged at his steps even as he pretended to be strong. Her stepfather. The door slammed open. He entered the hall without hesitation, as if he owned it. The torches did not dim for him, nor did the shadows retreat. Yet he did not notice. His eyes were on the girl. "There you are," he growled, voice dripping with irritation, as though she had wandered too far and delayed his supper. "You cost me more trouble than you're worth. Do you think I'll let you vanish into the night after the price I got for you? You're mine." The girl did not move. Her heart raced, but her spine was straight. For the first time she felt taller than him, though he loomed with his broad shoulders and bitter sneer. He strode forward, his boots striking against the glowing silver floor. He did not see the symbols beneath him, nor the way they hissed at his touch, dimming where he stepped. The strangers watched in silence, their eyes glowing faintly, their patience unyielding. "Get away from these cloaked fools," he snapped, his voice sharp as a whip. "You'll come with me now. They've had their fun and I've had my coin. A girl like you is nothing but work without worth." The servant girl flinched at his words. But the girl herself did not. She remembered the moment of kneeling, the voices that had called her heir to truth. She remembered her mother's face in the fragments of memory. And she remembered the tolling clock, each strike shattering chain she had not known bound her. "You sold me," she said, her voice steady, quiet as thunder before it breaks. Her stepfather's sneer widened. "And I'd do it again. Do you think anyone ever wanted you? You were a burden to your mother, a curse to me. Coin was the only good thing that came from you. And now I'll take you back and you'll serve me until I decide otherwise." The strangers shifted. Their cloaks rustled like leaves in wind, though no air moved in the hall. The girl lifted her hand. The glow from her skin flared brighter, spilling across the silver. "You cannot take me," she whispered. Her stepfather barked a laugh. "Can't I? You're still a child. You'll always be mine to command." But the hall itself seemed to disagree. The silver symbols lit up again, brighter than before. The walls dissolved into starlight, the ceiling into endless sky. The strangers rose to their feet, their forms taller, sharper, no longer cloaked but shining like fragments of constellations. The man froze, his confidence faltering for the first time. What is this trick?" The girl stepped forward, the silver light following her. She did not shout. She did not plead. Her words fell calm, heavy, inevitable. "You are not my blood. You never were. My mother hid me and you betrayed her. You thought you could sell me. But truth is not yours to trade." Her stepfather's face twisted, fear fighting with fury. "You think you're more than me? You think?" A crack of thunder silenced him. Lightning flashed across the ceiling of stars, illuminating his face, every wrinkle of cruelty, every line of greed. The strangers raised their hands but they did not strike. They only watched. Because this was not theirs to finish. The girl's voice deepened, layered with echoes of those who had come before her. "You will not touch me again." The silver floor blazed where he stood. He staggered back, eyes wide as heat seared beneath his boots. His mouth opened but no sound came. For the first time he looked small, smaller than the girl he had tried to sell. The servant girl whispered, awestruck, "He does not command you. You command him." The man stumbled toward the door, his arrogance broken, his steps no longer heavy but scrambling, desperate. The girl did not chase him. She did not need to. For when midnight had crowned her, his hold had ended. The echoes of her stepfather's retreat faded down the stone corridor. His boots struck the ground unevenly, no longer heavy with power but clattering with panic. When the door slammed shut behind him, the hall fell utterly silent again, except for the faint hum of the silver symbols beneath their feet. The girl stood at the circle's center, her body still trembling from the confrontation. Her glow had dimmed to a soft ember, yet it did not vanish. It lingered in her skin, in her breath, in her very bones, as if the midnight had carved it there forever. The strangers, those cloaked figures who had first bowed when the clock struck 12, slowly began to rise. Their faces were no longer hidden. The light of the stars revealed them for what they were, not men and women of flesh alone, but beings threaded with something greater. Their skin shimmered faintly, their eyes burned like distant constellations, their voices, when they finally spoke, seemed to emerge from more than one throat. The servant girl bowed low beside the glowing circle, her forehead nearly touching the ground. But the strangers did not bow again. Instead, they turned their gazes upon the girl, their expressions solemn, reverent, questioning, as if even they sought her answer. One of them, tall and broad-shouldered, stepped forward. His voice carried the weight of mountains. "You stood unbroken before the one who claimed to own you. That was your first trial. Many falter when the hand that raised them turns cruel. You did not. You spoke the truth and truth unmade his power." Another, her hair silver as moonlight, lifted her hands as though blessing the air around the girl. "You must understand, child. We knelt not because you are weak, not because you are pitiful, not because you were betrayed. We knelt because midnight crowned you, and we have waited long for this crowning." The girl swallowed hard, her throat aching. "Waited? For me? But I am no queen. I am no priestess. I am only—" her voice faltered, the words refusing to form. She wanted to say a burden, a daughter unwanted, a girl sold like coin. But the words burned on her tongue as if the midnight itself forbade them. "You are truth," another figure answered, his eyes burning like coals. And truth cannot be owned. It cannot be sold, nor silenced, nor chained in huts or forests. We kneel because you are the vessel of what we swore to serve, the voice that outlives lies. The girl's knees threatened to buckle. She had thought her stepfather's cruelty was the measure of her worth. She had believed herself cursed to insignificance. But these beings, strangers and yet not strangers, were telling her that she was the very opposite of powerless. The servant girl lifted her head then, tears streaking her cheeks. Do you see now? Why I brought you here. Why the coins exchanged for you were no loss, but a bargain struck to place you in their circle. The words struck like lightning. Her stepfather had sold her in greed, but the strangers had bought her in oath. She had thought herself discarded, but in truth she had been delivered. Still, doubt gnawed at her heart. Why me? Why must it be me? There must be others, stronger, braver, wiser. The silver-haired woman shook her head. There is only one in each age. Only one who carries the full weight of the bloodline. You are she. The circle beneath her feet blazed brighter as if agreeing. Heat pulsed through her palms, up her arms into her chest, until her whole body hummed. She pressed her hands against her ribs, struggling to contain the strange fire. One by one the strangers lowered themselves again, not fully kneeling but bowing, each hand pressed over their hearts. Their voices rose together, a chorus that echoed against the star-woven ceiling. We are the keepers of the hidden hour. We guard what others forget. We serve the one whom midnight crowns. And tonight that one is you. The girl staggered back, breath caught between awe and terror. Their words washed over her, filling the empty spaces carved by years of cruelty. Yet they also filled her with burden. A crown of truth was not like other crowns. It did not mean wealth or comfort. It meant fire. It meant weight. It meant the kind of power that burned both wielder and world. Her voice cracked as she asked, "And if I cannot bear it? If I fail?" The broad-shouldered one stepped closer, his expression grave but not unkind. "Then the age will falter with you. But we do not believe you will fail. Midnight chose you. And midnight does not err." The words pressed into her like a vow. Her hands shook, but she clenched them into fists, forcing herself to stand taller. She felt the silver hum under her feet again, not as a burden this time, but as a heartbeat, hers and something greater's. The servant girl whispered almost too softly to hear, "You were sold for coins but bought by the stars." The girl closed her eyes, letting the words settle. For the first time she believed them. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself looking not at strangers but at kin, not by blood of flesh but by blood of oath and truth. And as they gazed back, she realized, she was no longer alone. The hall had grown quieter, though the silver glow remained. The girl stood in its heart, the warmth of the stranger's oath still burning in her chest. Yet as the fire inside her pulsed, so too did unease. Truth was not a crown of jewels. It was heavy iron pressing against her shoulders. She had seen her stepfather cower, seen the stranger's bow, seen her own body shine with fire, but what did it mean? What was she meant to do with this power she had not asked for? The servant girl rose, touching her arm gently. "You carry more than light now. You carry weight. It will not be easy." The girl's voice cracked. "Wait." "Yes," the silver-haired woman replied, stepping forward. Her eyes gleamed with starlight, but her tone was solemn. "Truth is no gift of comfort. It is a blade. It cuts through lies, but it cuts the hand that wields it too. Every bearer of your blood has known it." The words pressed heavy on her heart. She had dreamed once of being free of her stepfather, of being loved, of living quietly without fear. Yet now even freedom seemed like a distant shore. Could a bearer of truth ever be free? She whispered, "What if I cannot bear it? What if it breaks me?" The broad-shouldered stranger answered, his voice deep as stone. "Then it breaks you. And still the world will remember. For truth does not vanish with the vessel. It burns into all who see it. That is the burden." The girl lowered her eyes. In her mind, she saw the villagers who had turned away when she was sold. She remembered the silence of her funeral in another tale that might have been hers, the emptiness of their indifference. Would they see her now? Would they despise her or bow as the strangers did? The servant girl squeezed her arm again. "Listen to me. You were not chosen because you are flawless. You were chosen because you could endure. Midnight does not crown those who crave power. It crowns those who have suffered beneath it, who know its cruelty and will not wield it carelessly." The words struck deep, easing some of the trembling inside her. But still a question gnawed. What of my stepfather? Of those like him? If I carry this This truth must I destroy them? The silver-haired woman's gaze softened. Not all lies are destroyed with fire. Some wither in light. You will know when the time comes, what must burn and what must be endured. The girl drew in a slow breath. Her glow dimmed, settling into her like an ember buried in ash, still alive, still fierce, but quieter now. She no longer blazed like a torch. She carried the fire inside, unseen but undeniable. The strangers bowed their heads once more, not in worship but in acknowledgement, as one would honor a sovereign not of title but of truth. The servant girl smiled faintly, though her eyes shone with tears. Do you see now? You were never worthless. You were never unwanted. The world may have turned its back, but the hour itself kept watch for you. The girl swallowed hard, her throat raw, her eyes burning. She felt both smaller than she had ever been and greater than she had ever imagined. A child sold like coin, a daughter unwanted, and yet, at midnight, crowned with something eternal. The burden pressed heavier. But for the first time she straightened her back and did not flinch beneath it. The hall could not hold her forever. When the girl stepped out into the night, the air shifted. It was no longer heavy with rain or thick with silence. Instead, it pulsed as though every tree, every stone, every shadow waited for her next breath. The fire she carried within did not stay hidden. It leaked from her skin, a faint shimmer, a glow that clung to her hair and fingers like threads of lightning. The strangers followed at a distance, silent guardians draped in their constellated cloaks. The servant girl remained close, steadying her, though it was not she who guided the girl anymore. It was the fire. The path back to the village was wet with mud, though no new storm fell. Yet as the girl walked, the earth dried beneath her steps. The air grew warmer. Sparks clung to her footprints before fading into the soil. The servant whispered, awe in her voice, "It begins." When the girl reached the edge of the village, she stopped. Houses stood crooked in the dark, roofs patched with straw, walls leaning under years of neglect. Yet it was not their decay that struck her, it was their silence. No voices, no laughter, not even quarrels. The village slept, but uneasily as though afraid of its own dreams. She raised her hand. The glow flared. And the silence broke. From the nearest house came a scream, not of pain but of fear. A man stumbled out, clutching his chest as though it burned. His wife followed, her face twisted, eyes wide. Flames licked at the corners of their home, not flames of destruction but of revelation. They burned without consuming, lighting the walls until shadows peeled away, revealing marks, secrets carved in wood, names hidden in whispers, lies that had long been buried. One by one doors opened. Villagers spilled into the night, staring at the impossible fire. It spread from house to house, skipping roofs and beams, igniting only the hidden, the unspoken. Whispers of betrayal, of theft, of cruelty, etched into walls, rising in smoke, filling the night with voices long silenced. The villagers cried out. Some fell to their knees, begging forgiveness. Others tried to stamp the fire out with their feet, only to find it pass through them, burning nothing but falsehood. The girl's heart pounded. She had not willed this. She had not spoken. And yet the truth she carried spilled outward, unstoppable. Her stepfather's house was the last to catch. Flames curled around its frame, but they did not climb the walls. Instead, they spread across the ground, forming a circle that trapped the door. When he burst outside, his face pale, his clothes disheveled, the fire rose higher, yet still did not burn him. The villagers turned, their eyes drawn to him, as though the fire itself had pointed him out. Whispers rippled through the crowd, words he had buried, deeds he had hidden. They saw him now as he truly was, a man who had sold what was never his to sell. He snarled at the girl, spitting words into the night. This is your doing. You bring ruin with every step. But she did not answer. She did not need to. The fire spoke for her. It rose between them, forming a wall of light. His voice faltered, drowned beneath the roar of truth uncoiling. He tried to push through, but the flame curved away from him, not touching his flesh, only refusing him passage. He stumbled back, sweat glistening on his brow, as if the fire's refusal was worse than its embrace. The villagers knelt then, not to him, not to the strangers, but to her. Their faces were pale, their bodies trembling, their voices broken. Forgive us. We did not see. We turned away. The girl trembled. Part of her longed to forgive, to let the fire fade. Another part longed to see it consume them all, every coward, every liar. The burden weighed on her shoulders, heavy as iron. The servant girl touched her arm again, whispering, You need not destroy them. Truth itself has undone them already. The girl looked around. The fire flickered higher, but it did not burn a single roof beam. It only burned shadows. It only burned lies. And when it finished, it left behind nothing but rawness. Villagers stripped of their secrets, forced to face themselves in the light of midnight. Her stepfather too remained. The fire circled him tighter, its heat pressing against him until his knees buckled. He fell to the ground, no longer snarling, no longer proud. The girl turned her back to him. Not in mercy, not in vengeance, but in recognition that his power was gone, and she need not waste herself on him. The strangers bowed once more. The silver-haired woman spoke softly, so only the girl heard, "This is the fire that follows. It cannot be hidden. Wherever you walk, truth will burn." The girl closed her eyes, feeling the burden settle deeper into her bones. She did not yet know if she would master it or if it would consume her. But as she opened them again, she saw the village on its knees. And she knew, nothing could ever be the same. Years passed, and the girl who had once been sold into silence became something more than mortal memory. The villagers did not speak her name easily, for it burned their tongues as surely as the fire had once burned their walls. Yet even silence could not bury her story. Children whispered it to one another beneath blankets, wide-eyed with awe. Elders told it around fires, their voices low, as though the night itself leaned closer to listen. They called her many things: the girl of flames, the truth-bearer, the midnight crown. Her stepfather's house never recovered. Though it was rebuilt time and again, each roof beam cracked, each wall leaned, each fire smoldered to ash. He lived long enough to see his shame etched in every villager's gaze. He shrank into himself, no longer daring to meet their eyes, until at last he vanished into the forest and was never seen again. Some claimed the fire had taken him in secret. Others said the forest had opened its mouth and swallowed him whole. The servant girl who had stood beside the truth-bearer remained in the village. She became a woman known for her sharp eyes and her gentleness. People came to her for counsel, for she had walked beside the fire and lived. She never took credit, never spoke of her own courage. But sometimes, when clouds gathered heavy and low, she would look to the horizon and whisper, "She is walking again." The strangers, cloaked in constellations, were seen only once more. A hunter swore he glimpsed them at the edge of the mountain pass, watching the sky as though it were a map only they could read. When asked if they spoke, he said, "No." But they bowed. None doubted him. The girl herself was never seen again within the village, though her presence lingered. When the first great drought struck, farmers trudged to her old hut, now an abandoned ruin half-eaten by vines. They fell to their knees, not before the crumbled walls, but before the earth itself. They poured out water onto the ground, whispering, "Truth-bearer, walk with us." And the rain came. Not instantly, not in a sudden storm, but in a steady, life-giving rhythm. The kind of rain that soaks into the soil, the kind that grows roots deep and wheat strong. From that year on, whenever the sky cracked with drought, villagers carried water to her grave and poured it there, trusting that her fire still burned in the heavens. Her grave itself became a place of pilgrimage. It was simple, a mound of earth marked only by stones the villagers laid. But the stones never stayed the same. Each year new ones appeared, carved with words, "Forgive me. Help me. Walk with us." The old stones were taken by the river, washed smooth and carried into the world. Children sometimes found them downstream and kept them as charms, whispering the story of the girl who made fire from truth. One tale lingered strongest of all. On storm nights, when the clouds rolled heavy and the sky tore open with lightning, some swore they saw her. Not a ghost, not a shadow, but her figure walking within the storm itself, her hair like falling sparks, her eyes like torches. She walked above the rooftops, her steps leaving trails of flame in the rain. And those who saw her said she did not look angry nor sorrowful, only steady as though she bore her burden across eternity. The elders turned her story into warning. Never bury a soul without love, for the sky remembers what men forget. Parents told their children, "Do not twist truth, for it will return as fire." And lovers whispered at parting, "Let no silence stand between us, lest the truth-bearer come." But for some, her tale was not just warning. It was comfort. For the powerless, the broken, the unheard, it was hope. A reminder that even if their voices were cut out, their truths would one day burn free. Generations passed. The village changed. Huts became houses, carts became wheels of iron, songs grew new melodies. Yet still, when drought came, water was poured at her grave. Still, when storms rolled across the mountains, villagers turned their faces upward and searched the clouds. And sometimes, just sometimes, they swore they saw her, her figure outlined in lightning, her fire burning across the heavens. The girl had become more than a memory. She was legend. She was warning. She was prayer. And above all, she was proof. Truth cannot be silenced. It may be bound, buried, even burned, but in the end it burns back.